When my mother was giving birth to me, she met a woman in the delivery room who was giving birth the same day, and her son is gay. So I have literally had a day. My first word was honey, and my pacifier was mid-century modern. By the time I got to high school, I had one desire: to combine my two favorite things, gays and disco, and go to a gay disco. I knew they were out there, I just didn't know how to find them. There was no Next magazine or Homo Hop Stop to tell me where to go. So I went off in search of the elusive gay disco like a spandex-clad Sacagawea. After an initial failed foray into an after-work disco on the top of a Howard Johnson's, my fledgling gaydar kicked in and I found the 1270. Well, that was it. My homo hymen was broken and I was home. Every night after that, I'd pack up my little bottle of poppers, rush Bolton locker room. I didn't drink or do drugs. I just inhaled lethal fumes and head off into the night. Darts, buddies, chaps, the 12. But my favorite club was a mega disco on the Fenway in Boston called Boston. And I went every Sunday night. The gay night. The gays only got Sunday back then. But I went every night. It was my religion. I'd show my fake ID at the door, climb up on the speaker, take off my shirt, and start to dance. And it was on this speaker that I met my best friend. Hey, I know you. You were with my friend Francis at Dunster Street, right? What's your name? Oh, hi, David. I'm Nora. Oh, I love this song. Do you want some poppers? He climbed up on the speaker, took off his shirt, too, and we danced together all night long. Well, till 2 a.m. It was Boston. We were both seniors in high school. But he'd been kicked out of hippie boarding school for smoking pot. I know, some hippie boarding school that was. So he was living in an apartment on the Fenway. Now, when the club closed, he asked me if I wanted to go home with him. Well, we'd been dancing together half naked, and making out all night, so I had a brief, ooh, maybe this is it, I don't know if I'm ready, but we were having so much fun. I said, sure. So we got back to his place. Hi. And we were actually both really relieved that his roommate was home. So we grabbed a giant boombox and an old blanket, and we jumped into a shopping cart we found, and we wheeled each other around the Fenway until dawn. I still remember lying together on the bench, on Commonwealth Avenue as the sun came up and thinking, this is who I want to be with for the rest of my life. It was the summer of 1979. We spent the rest of July and August pasted together, the way you do with a new lover or best friend. Best friend. I love the sound of that term, best friend. Who's your best friend? Do you have a best friend? OMG, RBG is my BFF. See, I've been a lonely only child, and when I was 8, I got a best friend. And it was amazing, but I hadn't had a best friend for a while. So, when I met David, my life was complete. Now, who here has a best friend? Oh, don't raise your hand or anything, because maybe you're with a good friend, but they're not your best friend. They're best friend. Or you're with your lover, so you think you're supposed to say your lover is your best friend, which I hate. I hate that. My lover is my best friend. No, a best friend is something different. It's like a lover, but without the secrets and the body fluids and the weird shit. Now, a best friend is just that person you speak a secret language with. You share crazy Lucy and Ethel adventures, like getting arrested on the roof of the Plaza Hotel, or stealing Diana Ross's eyelash, or wheeling each other around the Fenway until dawn. But best of all, no matter where you go, you always know you have a home to return to. A home where you are always welcome. So, David and I were home. Now, that summer in Boston, we each had crappy day jobs. I was in a historical colonial play. I wore a bonnet and bloomers and said, "Hark, the British approach." David would meet me for lunch, make me take off my bonnet, and we'd figure out what club we were going to that night and which Fiorucci jumpsuit to wear. Now, in addition to gays and disco and gay disco, I was also obsessed with New York City. I read Interview and After Dark magazine and Dancer from the Dance, and I just knew that was where I belonged. Now, I only applied to 2 colleges, both purely because they were in New York City, and if I hadn't gotten in, I was just going to move there. Now, luckily, standards were a lot lower back then. No photoshopping required. I got in, David packed me up, and off I went. Now, he had already committed to going to the museum school in Boston in the fall, but he was going to come visit me as soon as possible. New York City. New York City is my Oz. Isn't she beautiful? Now, I know some people move here to start a hedge fund or star in a Broadway show. I had no plan. I just knew it was where I had to be, where my tribe was, where all my dreams would come true, and where the gays disco dance all night long. Now, in 1979, Studio 54 was still the golden Coke spoon of discos. I promised David I would wait for his first visit before I went. Now, when the night came, we got all trussed up in our shiniest parachute pants, glitter gel and puffy perms, and headed down to 54th Street. As we rounded the corner of 54th, we saw this enormous crowd of high-haired disco desperados and celebrity doorman Mark Beneke standing on a bench pointing to who got in and who didn't. Now, we had never seen anything like this before, but some primal nightlife instinct kicked in, and we just knew if we pushed our way to the front and didn't get picked, that was it. We were never getting in. Our not pickedness would be permanently imprinted on our padded shoulders. So instead of pushing forward, we pulled back. And as we stood on the corner of 54th and 8th, trying to think what to do, tease our hair higher, wave Mylar tambourines, blow disco whistles, a limousine pulled up.
Hey, do you kids want to go to Studio 54?
The driver was leaning out the window.
Do you want to go to studio?
Yes!
Get in.
So we did. And he pulled around to the front of the club. We were about to hop out, but he stopped us.
Get in.
And he came around and opened our door, holding up his fingers to indicate 2. Well, the velvet rope was lifted, and the crowd parted like a Norma Kamali flag. And as we walked regally to the front, I turned to thank him, but he just waved.
That's fine.
And we did. And every night after that, like every night, because we did not stay home ever. No one did. You did not stay home ever! I love studios!
Studio is over.
Oh, I miss studios. Did you see Fedora?
Grace Jones showed up at 5 a.m.
Howie!
Are
Alif!
you going to Palladium?
Have you been to Area?
We're going to Crystal after.
Oh, Jorge, Sally!
I'm on the list.
Is there a list?
I'm with them.
Can you check again?
Dinner first at 1:50.
We're eating at Odeon.
Mr. Chow, of course.
Patrick, Michael!
We're taking a taxi.
Get in the limo.
I have a subway token and a $5 bill.
Amazing.
So fucked up.
She's wasted.
Do you have any coke?
I need a drink ticket. Eric and Beach.
Are you a model?
Oh, throwing up all over your bank cash.
15 Quaaludes.
The mafia guy gave me blow.
You gave the bouncer a blowjob.
Brooke Shields was there.
He's in a bathroom stall with Brenda Vaccaro.
Sylvia Miles.
Again.
Now, I was never one of the cool people. Definitely not. Now, believe it or not, I actually don't have many memories from those days. I remember the studio story, and I remember this time that David and I went roller skating at the Roxy with this Kuwaiti princess he'd met, and she kept falling down, and her Mylar jumpsuit fell off, and we realized they don't have roller skating or bras in Kuwait. But I did keep a journal for just a couple of years, and reading it kind of helps explain why I don't remember a thing. Went to Xenon and Mud Club with Gypsy and Fedora. Got really good coke. Davey and I took a cab to Magic. Did a speedball. I don't even know what that is. Then to Crisco and Mud. So fucked up on drugs and drinks, I don't remember much. Went to a party at Danceteria. Did coke. Then Xenon. More coke. Danceteria made Xenon look like shit. Everyone at Danceteria was too cool. I went back to Xenon and got more coke. He and I went to Berlin at 3 a.m. Coke, speed, Quaaludes, studio, blow with some guy in a limo. Coke in the back room at Peppo. Did the town in electric tape. New York, Xenon, studio, ending up with Richie, throwing up in the cab all the way home. Now, it was easy to feel like a star back then. Everyone was a star. But I think I was really just the drunk girl dancing on the speaker.
Nora, wasn't she that drunk girl dancing on the speaker?
So I'm really glad that we didn't have cell phone cameras back then. I'm also glad that we didn't have Snapchat or texting, or I wouldn't have the piles of notes and letters that David and I wrote to each other. Like this one night, we were at studio, totally fucked up, and David went up to the balcony, and he came back later and he gave me this little note he'd written to me on a napkin, which I still have, like a little cocktail-stained shroud of Turin.
Nora, I am very fucked up, and I had to come upstairs and write something to you. I love you, Nora. You are the love affair of my life. I'm in love and fascinated with your beauty. I mean, some women are beautiful in a cold way, but you have a warm beauty. You have more charisma than anyone. People can't help but look at you and fall in love with you. I love you, and I wanted to tell you. The sun shines, and it just makes a man want to take off his clothes. Terrible for Nora.
No, trust me, no one else felt that way.
David did.
Now, around this time, I realized that school was interfering with my night life. So I decided to take the year off. School. Now, David had moved to New York, and we were living in the East Village and penniless. Our parents selfishly refused to fund our clubbing lifestyle, so we needed jobs. Now, there were no colonial historic plays in New York City, and I was otherwise unskilled. I was completely intimidated by the thought of waitressing. I mean, how do you get a job like that? What do you do once you have it? I've never served food before. I had no experience. The only thing I knew how to do was take off my clothes and dance. So naturally, I became a stripper. I mean, it was a no-brainer, like literally a no-brainer. I went to this place called The Agency that advertised in the Village Voice. It was in an old building in Midtown. And when you went in, there was a little fat guy who sat behind the desk.
What's with the bonnet? Show me your tits.
So I did.
Yeah.
And he pointed to a wall behind it with a list of all the clubs in town and the names of the girls working there.
Well, what's your name?
Nora.
Nora. Your stripper name.
Oh, Tanya. So every week after that, Tanya would get a list of all the clubs she was stripping in. Now, I say stripping, but this was before the burlesque craze. This was before Julie Atlas Muse danced in a bubble at the Whitney Biennial. This was just down and dirty topless dancing. Now they started you off in the really raunchy Times Square clubs because it was the only way to get new meat into the super sleazy clubs where all the regular girls had track marks and bleeding gums. No, I mean, they were perfectly nice, but after a night of swatting off one-eyed leopards, you'd call the little fat man in the morning and you'd say, I am never working at the Golden Dollar again. Now, the Pussycat was actually my favorite club. It was downtown and the owner was really nice. You didn't have to hustle guys for drinks in between sets. And my fortunes were about to change because one night he came up and said that some friends of his were starting a company that was going to do a new take on singing telegrams. They were going to send strippers. So I became one of the first strippergram girls. And I even keep one of the telegrams we used to pull out of our G-string, but you know what? These were uncertain times. I'm just going to leave it there. You never know. Now, David was having an equal career conundrum. He didn't really have the temperament for the service industry. He worked for a couple of nights at this tacky Times Square club called Bonds, where the old queen owner made all the waiters and busboys wear little tiny silver shorts and nothing else. But now after his silver ass had been grabbed for the umpteenth time, he threw his tray of drinks on the floor and marched out, wearing nothing but his little silver shorts, which may have set the stage for his next career because, you see, he did have the temperament and the talent for sex. And judging from the 3 hours it would take him to run his errands, it was a talent he enjoyed immensely and practiced diligently. So, David went right to the top of the flesh food chain and became a high-class hooker.
I mean, it was having sex anyway. You might as well get paid for it.
Exactly. Now, our early days in New York unfolded in a cacophony of drugs, sex clubs, and antibiotics. We moved into a series of cheap East Village apartments back when cheap meant $250, not $250,000, which won't get you a studio in Bed-Stuy now. But those cheap rents afforded us a certain luxury to lollygag around, wallow in our weirdness. A couple of hustles or strippergrams and the rent was paid. You could just hang out, be a freak, spend hours putting together an outfit with pantyhose and electric tape. Now, after we'd move in somewhere, I would empty my stuff out on the floor, roll out my mattress, set up my stereo, and I was done. That was it. This is all I knew how to do. You see, my mother thought that cleaning was a symbol of a patriarchal society. Well, I don't know, she was just really lazy, but this is how I grew up. Here's a picture of David in my childhood bedroom, where you can see that I basically lived like a little crack whore. With gerbils instead of jars. So, when I moved in and thrown my shit on the floor, David would sigh and groan and start cleaning up my mess. Which is kind of how we lived our lives back then. I would make a mess, and David would sigh and groan and start cleaning up my life. Whether it was by bringing home a beautiful plant or digging me out from under a banquette at the end of the night and finding my shoes. He kept me alive. Now, I think there are people who life finds and others who have to go out looking for it. Like, I have to be out there every minute, meeting people, saying, hi, how are you? Thank you for coming to my show. Let's have lunch. But David, life found David. He just had that thing. He'd go to the store for milk. Come back with an invitation to Elton John's party on David Geffen's yacht. I'd come back with a pint of expired half and half. He wasn't just beautiful, there were lots of beauties. But he changed the energy in the room, like the way a celebrity does, but less awkward and more exciting. He exuded sex, but he was also brilliant and funny and passionate and poetic and tortured, which, as we all know, is an unbeatable combination. Now, we moved to the West Village when it was still a village and not a brand. Bleecker Street was a row of laundromats, delis, and junk shops, and Mark Jacobs was just a sweet long-haired boy who went to Parsons. Now, in addition to being funky and affordable, it was also a gritty, glorious gay playground. And I was obsessed with the smooth, sexy way men glided through the streets, subtly signaling each other in the days before cockshots on Grindr. Now, don't worry. I'm not trying to be poignant, all dressed up in my dead friend's clothes, because, well, you don't even know he's dead yet. But this is what I would look like when David would take me cruising. See, I was obsessed with Christopher Street and the piers and horny gay men. So David would dress me up like a guy and take me down to the docks, and we'd make out. And he'd move me away if anyone tried to join in. Now, David would usually call me to come meet him at his latest friend's house. Like this one time. He called me to come meet him at this bar called, this apartment next to this bar called Julius. Now, Julius is now one of the last old school gay bars left in New York City. But then it was just one of many, though known for catering to older gentlemen and the boys who love it. So when I got to this apartment, David was in bed with two boys, Bruce Campbell and Patrick McMullen. Bruce, an adorable boy with a flop of brown hair and a killer smile, was a hustler. Now, we all hustled back then. You hustled for dinner, drinks, party invitations, limo rides, love, but Bruce was a professional. Now, photographer Patrick McMullen was the same social lion back then that he still is today. So after that, most of our evenings would start and or end at his apartment on Lower Fifth Avenue. And at some point in there, we'd wind up at the Ninth Circle, the hustler bar on 10th Street that was kind of our Cheers. Now, thank goodness Patrick had the energy to carry his camera wherever he went, or an entire generation of party going would be lost. Now, I didn't take many pictures, but I did still have my journal. So this is a typical passage from those days. Met David at the train station, and we came downtown, walked around, and then met the fags, Bruce, Terry, etc., at Julius, where David and I mostly talked to Felito. Then we left and went to the apartment where David and Bruce are staying with this cute ex-Marine, Robbie. David and Bruce were talking in the other room, so Robbie and I started making out. Then David came in and joined us, and Bruce left in a huff. Then Patrick and Terry and the others came over, and David left in a fury. Now, there was always lots of drama, and then we'd all go dancing, and everything would be fine. Now, I have no idea who most of the people in this journal are, and I didn't really need anyone because I had David. And even though he was always falling in love and having boyfriends, they wouldn't last, and he'd come back to me. At one point, we even shared a giant loft bed, and when he brought someone home, he just pushed me aside. After one particularly hot, hard summer of too little money and too much venereal disease, we decided to spend the fall at his family's house on an island in Maine called Idaho.
Idaho's.
No, Idaho, it's French. A beautiful, but by September, completely deserted island about 6 hours north of Boston. Is anyone here from Maine? Okay, well, as all 7 people from Maine know, summer there, which is called spring everywhere else, ends about August 1st, and then it's winter. David had decided to quit smoking right before we went, and 3 days after we arrived, I came down with the hepatitis that he'd had a few weeks earlier. So our trip kind of started off like Walking Dead meets the show. I just lay in bed, staring at my enormous liver, and I wasn't sure we'd survive. At one point, I had to hide in the garage, holding my swollen stomach, because I thought David was going to kill me if he couldn't find a cigarette. But once our yellow complexions paled and our sanity returned, we spent our days driving around the island in an old Jeep Scout and listening to mixtapes. I still have boxes of the mixtapes David made. Music was so much a part of our lives. It was the soundtrack to everything we did. We didn't get out of bed unless Grace Jones was pulling up to the bumper or brush our teeth without Patti LaBelle, Voulez-vous coucher avec moi. It was mostly dance, but also rock and punk. But the band that was ours was Roxy Music. And Dance Away was ours. I guess I just always thought we'd have all this time, you know? We'd be swaying in our rockers, listening to Brian Ferry, while I asked him, who was Polito? Do you remember Robbie, the ex-Marine? Did you fuck him or did I? We went to that famous Diana Ross concert in Central Park. And when the spectacular storm came, and she stood on stage in her sequin bodysuit, with the wind and the rain whipping through her giant weave, and she said,
I love you. Go home. I love you.
we did what Miss Ross said. But we went back the next night for her ill-fated makeup concert. And 10 minutes into it, just as she was coming out, David grabbed my hand and said, we're going home. Now, I didn't want to, but he had a funny feeling that something bad was going to happen. And sure enough, hours later, our roommate came home and said that it had turned into a massive melee of muggings and beatings that he'd climbed up onto a rock to watch unfold. We laughed about how, thank goodness, that mountain was high enough. We laughed about everything back then. We laughed about the mixed-up teens and the wet, soggy queens. We laughed about posers and primpers and our pathetic president.
Which one?
Oh, don't get me started. And we even laughed about an article in the New York Times about the cancer in gay men that was probably caused by track lighting or industrial carbon. Ma'am, I'm looking at you and I'm thinking your name begins with a C. What is your name? Laura. I have a feeling Darling, I have a feeling there is a gay man. Ma'am, I'm looking at you and I'm seeing a body in a cold, dark place. Your great-grandmother. She's dead, right? Now, I have no witchiness or magical thinking whatsoever, which can be good. Like, if I'm about to get on a plane and I suddenly have a feeling something terrible is going to happen, no need to worry. Nothing will happen because I have zero intuition. No witchiness. But David has spirituality that I completely lack. So I wonder if he sensed a bigger storm was coming. Now, there were actually a couple of storms. One was that I got a boyfriend. Now, I had never wanted a boyfriend because I had David. But I met a boy who stuck around, even though I told him in no uncertain terms that David was and always would be the love of my life. A boy who stuck around, even though our second date consisted of me and David filling up his VW van with a bunch of queens on acid and going to the safe. And a boy who stuck around because David liked him, which was rare. David didn't like a lot of my friends. If he didn't like someone, you knew it. But I think maybe he sensed I needed someone else in my life. Now, this is pretty much the last passage in my journal, and then I stopped keeping it. Today, looking at my reflection in the train window, I thought of marrying Pete. David will be my maid of honor, I thought, and it made me very sad. I can't imagine us not needing each other, though our love will always exist. David is capable of capturing the hearts of many, and only fools can forget it. David is worthy of waging war for, I truly believe. I was only 20. I was allowed to be dramatic. The second storm, a gay man, the 80s. That storm was a tsunami. First it was grid, and then it was AIDS. And it wasn't caused by track lighting or industrial carpeting or poppers as much as we wanted it to be. It was caused by a virus that was spread by sex. How could death be spread by sex? By beautiful, wonderful, hot, sexy sex, by men on the piers sex, by leather guys at the mine shaft, by cruising guys in the meat rack sex, even by loving long-term relationship sex. We didn't know what was happening. It all unfolded slowly, like some terrible nightmare. Terry died after going to Paris for some treatment, and Andrew went into the hospital and never came out. Luther disappeared, and Lars went into St. Vincent's.
On and on and on.
And on. But we never talked about David's health. I mean, he had BD all the time, and he was getting some strange ailments, but he was strong and beautiful, so we didn't talk about it. We were young, and life went on. David blossomed when he discovered the East Village, and this whole wonderful world of fabulous freaks opened up to him. He loved this wonderful world. Pyramid, boy bar, wig stop. I was like the baby bird, waiting with my mouth open for him to fill me up with parties, invitations, people. He made all these amazing friends like Joey Arias and Lady Bunny, John Sex, Chi-Chi and Johnny. Club She and Disco Divas and Drag Aid, and he made a calendar called Drag 88. He gave one to my parents, which they dutifully hung up. And I still remember my mother saying, I can't wait for June to be over. And I asked her why. said, oh, it's the buttocks. It's a little embarrassing when the neighbors come over. Now, David himself was a production. At a time when being gay was looked upon scarily, and even within the gay community, being overtly sexual was looked down upon, David was always turned out as a celebration of male hotness. Disco diva, act up dude, Thomas Finland trucker, leather guy, sexy lumberjack. Now, during this time, while he was doing more and more, I was doing less and less. I'd finally learned to waitress, so I was working at this tacky restaurant on Park Avenue with Jennifer Coolidge, Sandra Bullock, and a bunch of ex-Playboy bunnies. O.J. Simpson would come in and do coke with the owner, and I'm sure Donald Trump was there grabbing pussies with his little hands. I spent my days half-heartedly auditioning for off Broadway plays, and my nights crashing parties, drinking too much, and doing too little. So, it's 2019, and David has been dead for over 25 years. And I know you're thinking, well, that was an abrupt transition. I'm sorry. I just didn't know how to ease you into what you probably already suspected. And it's weird for me too, because I was heartbroken when he died, and I've missed him over the years, but lately I've been mourning him in this complete and visceral way, and I'm not really sure why. There are probably a lot of reasons. My increasingly distant youth, and the fun and excitement and friendships and possibilities that go through that. But I think that those of us who lived through the age of AIDS, the PTSD is wearing off, and there's a collective sense of mourning going on, a realization of our losses that we were too young or overwhelmed to fully take in, goodbyes we didn't get to say, and I love yous that came too late. So I'm not really sure why this has been hitting me so hard. I just know that I really miss my friend, and I'm looking for a way to connect with him, to tell him I love him, and bring him back into my life and show him who I became. Because I'm still here in 2019 in New York City, and our story's not over yet. Now, New York is going through a funny time. When the old guard, avant and otherwise, is being rapidly replaced. People are no longer fleeing the evil city. Instead, they're staying put, buying up townhouses, gutting them, installing lap pools, doggy day spas, and state-of-the-art nurseries. That exciting, dangerous, craggy city we came to in the 70s and 80s to escape our families and tourists and the wealthy has become a safe haven for families, tourists, and the wealthy. So there's a notable nostalgia for a time that's passed. Even among the millennials who missed it by a generation. Now, that's probably always been the case. Greetings, Goody Elizabeth. We missed you at the Reverend Jones sheep shearing bash on Thursday. But it pales in comparison to the wild butter churning raves Peter Stuyvesant used to have. Now, I still love New York City, even as she's being torn down and replaced with shiny, sterile buildings, because my ghosts and memories live under those glass towers, TD banks, and Spa Bell's nail salons. I still thrill at the skyline and smile when I see the young queers arrive all excited for their adventures ahead. I have no doubt there are fascinating enclaves of bespoke bohemians in the nether reaches of the outer boroughs like Flushing and Philadelphia. And they are out there doing it for their fabulous multi-gender selves. Now, I've never regretted a moment spent in New York City. I always just felt like being a New Yorker is a worthwhile profession. And while I don't love being old, I'm glad I got to be young when I was young. But Nostalgia is bittersweet because we were dying, sick and dying. And it's impossible to describe what it was like to live back then, so mostly we don't. And we focus on the fun and the funk and the fashion, which were fabulous. But even back then, it was impossible to face the everyday terror of AIDS, this incurable plague that was decimating our world. So whenever we could, we put on our wigs and our costumes and we danced as hard as we could.
I wanna be where the boys are, but I'm not allowed. I'm inside of the boys' bar. I want them to all come out.
David wanted to live. He was on the cutting edge of every medical advance and holistic treatment. He really believed he could beat the odds, and so did I. I mean, we were in our 20s. Life went on, until it didn't. By the late 80s, he was getting sick. The city was hard for him. He didn't have the energy for late nights, and he could never make plans because he didn't know when illness would strike. So he moved upstate. Now this is before everyone had a house upstate, because David always did everything first. Started working out before we queer in America, wanted to look like The Rock, got the first tattoos, went vegan, did yoga, flaunted his sexuality wherever he went. And even upstate, in the middle of the woods, he had more going on than I did in the heart of Manhattan. See, I hate the country. I have solophobia, which is the fear of being surrounded by less than 8 million people. And I'm always sure the naked man with a chainsaw is going to jump out. So I visited, but begrudgingly, and not enough. Not enough to see that David was changing. Dealing with mortality and illness was evolving him, maturing him, and taking him down a different path. I wasn't ready to go down that road. I still wanted to dance, and I wanted my fun, funky friend to get up on the speaker and dance with me. Upstate was too sedate for a still swirling party girl. But David loved it. I think the country speaks more to spiritual people. And my lack of spirituality bothered him too. Because David believed he would live on in some mystical sense, and he wanted me to believe it too. I mean, I was fine. I didn't need him to appear to me in apparitions and dreams because he gave me so much in making me who I am. But I'm sorry I couldn't promise him that I would imagine him as this vision of a hawk over the rainbow.
Yeah.
Now, when David moved upstate, he became as enamored of pastoral pursuits as he had been of urban activities, exchanging parties and clubs for pets, plants, and poetry. And he started writing a lot. And in poems and prose, he was finding his voice.
It's 7 a.m. I lace my New Balances and walk quickly up the lawn. There's a family of royal velvet columbines nodding at the entrance to the driveway, and I stop to pay homage. Thus begins my familiar warm-up gait, to wake the cranky morning fibers and vessels. I have done this so many times that I know the rhythms by heart and fall easily into the song of left, right, left, right, left, right, gravel squeaking slightly at the shoulders of the road, my arms swinging loose from my own shoulders like wings not quite in flight. It is the second or third wave of blossoming. Lilac, azaleas, rhododendron, and dogwood along the road are like festive bleachers lining a parade route. My muscles are lubricated with repetition and drive my feet along in their determined swinging with less and less effort. Soon I am floating off the top of my spine, my body hanging below, doing its job with absolute efficiency, sweating and alive, yet far away. As life unfolded, it began to occur to me that my long search for a completely satisfying and truthful form of creative expression might have yielded this unexpected that my physical being in itself possesses many of the qualities that can be defined as art. My body is an extension or creation of myself in that it is a product of generative and expressive labors, not unlike those involved in the stringing together of words or the splashing of paint on a canvas. There is inspiration, procrastination, illumination, and aggravation in and through all of you. There are the endless disciplines to be learned, and the wrestling with doubt and fear. There are miles of trails to be covered on this run alone, each step stronger and more precise than the last, like a story that just keeps getting better and better with each telling. My joy is that I get to live inside my creation. In this story, I am becoming. Running, lifting, working, and stretching have made it powerful and lean. It is illustrated with magical marks and tattooing, my totems and power tools. It responds like a lover when I use words of love. It tells me what it needs. It is a document of my triumph over AIDS. It reminds me constantly that I can achieve anything. Left, right, left, right, left, right.
David gave me a photo album that he put together right before he passed away. And it's a journal of his life, and I can't imagine what it would be like to be making your final chronicle at age 31. It opens with a baby picture, and it ends with his Tom of Finland drawing. And in between, there are pictures of his childhood, his friends, his family, and us. And me, and us together. Oh, don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole album, but I did just want to show you this one New York City page, because it tells so many stories. So, here's his picture in Interview magazine as a Studio 54 bartender, because he did eventually move up from that free limo ride. And, here's his name tag from when he worked at the Silver Shorts Club. And then there are two photo booth photo strips of me, and in this one I'm holding a disco music album, and I've drawn a mustache and armband on myself to look like a Christopher Street clone. And then there's this Polaroid-y one. And I'm not really sure who took it or where it was taken, but he looks pretty young, so I'm thinking it was probably from his time at museum school. So it might have been David Armstrong or Mark Morris Rowe, people he met in Boston. I went to a couple of parties at David Armstrong's East Village apartment where my idol, offbeat actress and writer, Cookie Mueller, would be holding court. Now, like David, she was someone who life found. They were life magnets. Now, I had nothing to say to Cookie. I would just hope that she would notice me drunkenly swaying in the kitchen doorway.
Wow. Who is that cool tipsy girl swinging in the doorway? And you come over and talk to me. How did you get so tipsy? How did you choose that doorway?
That was kind of my career philosophy back then. Someone would see me staggering around, stealing drinks, and say,
I want that fucked up girl with the bad perm to star in my next movie.
It never happened. And Cookie never talked to me either. Now, Mark Morris Rowe, a.k.a. Mark Dirt, died young of AIDS, but did a fair amount of work before he died. Mostly Polaroids and punky collages that have gained favor in the recent 80s art revival. Who knew that pictures of junkies and people dying of AIDS would become the darlings of the Sotheby's set? But now, a few years ago, Artist Space did a show of his work. And I went. And I walked in the room, and there on the wall was a giant picture of David. I hadn't been alone with him in so many years. Now, the world is a different place, and I'm a different person. I wound up marrying that man who drove us to the Saint, and now he has to pick up my messy piles. And even though I always hated children, I hate missing out on things even more. Like, if there's a party, I want to go. There's a show, I want to see it. So when I heard about kids, I was like, oh, all right, I'll try it. And I liked it. Who knew? And it changed me. And I wish David could have known that part of me, too. And I think he would have liked my kids. My son can do a mean runway in heels, and my daughter's always on Instagram with my gay friends. Sometimes she'll ask me, So, Mom, who's your best friend? And before I can answer, she'll say, oh, right, David. See, I have a wonderful family and friends I adore. But I never got another best friend. That friend who spoke my language, who made me mixtapes and wrote me notes on napkins. That friend who felt like home. Now, because we were apart a lot this last few years, I had to start making a life of my own. I did a cable show on Gay Cable Network in a studio that doubled as a sex club. So my guests would come in and slip on the lube and bang into the sun. And I joined a comedy group, a gay comedy group called Planet Q, which was really awful. But it was the first time I'd found something I liked to do, writing and performing comedy. But by then, David was too sick to see me do it. Tired and failing, he returned to Boston, where I'd visit him between rehearsals and Planet Q shows, parties, boy bar nights. When I'd see him, he'd try to give me things, try to say goodbye, tell me he loved me. And I was always like, oh honey, I'll see you again soon. On Fire Island the night David died. I wish he could see me now, see who I became, that I turned into someone besides the drunk girl dancing on the speaker, or maybe in addition to the drunk girl dancing on the speaker, and tell me who the fuck Felito is.
Nora, with all the things that we've been through, all the things we think, all the people that we meet, all the emotions that we feel, we'll have great subject matter for a wonderful bestseller. Shall we make it a collaboration? I'll be at Hal's. Call me if it gets disgustingly late. Phone number's in my book. I hope you sleep late. I hope you love me. I hope you never change. I love you.
David died on May 29th, 1993. A few months later, a friend of his came to see me perform, and he came backstage after the show.
Wow. I never knew you did anything. I just thought you were David's friend.
I am. I'm Nora.
Well, it seemed so cool when I walked you home, kissed goodnight. I said it's love, you said alright. It's funny how I could never cry until tonight, and you passed by.